everybody, and welcome to this panel. Before I start with the questions, I wanted to talk briefly about why we chose to include this panel within the conference. We wanted to include this panel because we believe that young people's voices are incredibly important. However, they often do not have a platform to talk and express to talk about and express their opinions. We often talk amongst ourselves. However, the opportunities to have these discussions with professionals who work in the field that affect us is more rare. And today we wanted to bridge that gap. Secondly, young people are the first to leave as they have less dependencies which tie them to their countries of origin. And as a result, it's more likely for them to leave and not return. So with that being said, I would like to welcome our panelists once more. And before we start with the questions, I wanted to ask all of you to just give a very short introduction on who you are, what you do, what you study, if you study, and also where you would place yourself within the theme of this conference. That is, whether you decided to stay, decided to move abroad, come back, or something else.
I'm president of the Romanian Association for Debate, Oratory, and Rhetoric. I studied at the London School of Economics, but then I came back during the pandemic, so there were also objective sort of pressures that made me come back. But yeah, I've left, I've come back. I think I'm thinking of maybe going away again for a bit, but long term, I see my future as being tied to Romania. And also because I'm president of the Romanian Association for Debate, I work towards training a lot of young people in debate, and they want to use those skills to get into good universities, mostly abroad. So to an extent, I feel like I'm contributing to the brain drain phenomenon. So I'll maybe talk a bit about what my perspective on that is. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So hi everyone. I'm Anna Bana. I'm still an undergraduate, but that is going to change very soon. I study applied world languages here in Romania, English and French, and I'm also a law student. The problem, leaving Romania was never an issue for me. It was never a subject for me. I never even took it into consideration. I plan on staying here, I plan on finishing my studies here and continuing my studies here, and I have a dream that can only be realized on Romania soil.
Tough commitment to follow after Anna's both a dream and commitment to the country, absolutely. So I'm Tudor, it's very nice to see everyone. I left Romania after going to high school here, and then went to university in the UK, and now I went to study law, and now work in London as legal counsel for a firm which focuses on scale-up, startup funding, and especially green energy tech investments within that space. In terms of kind of general plans as regards Romania and coming back, I'd really love to contribute a lot more to both to the Romanian context through areas such as policy, politics. I increasingly would quite like to slowly look at other ways of contributing beyond kind of pure focusing on law, focusing on kind of working as a legal counsel, and currently exploring ways in which I could do that and ways of having an impact in that respect right here.
Thank you. And if we could hear from the voice online.
Yeah, I guess I could go first. I hope you can hear me well. Hi everybody, thank you for the invitation. I'm Razvan, and together with Vlad, we co-founded Political Minut, or Instant Politics. We both studied abroad. I studied at King's College and UCL, and now I'm somewhere between Romania and Belgium, namely Brussels. So I'm in between coming back and working abroad. So yeah, I'm also very supportive of the idea of studying abroad. So I guess I'm also contributing to this idea of sending our youth abroad for them to study at least there. But I'm also supportive of the idea of coming back to Romania, because I think there's a lot of opportunities here, because I think you can do a lot here in Romania, and there's a lot of things that you cannot do abroad, but we can get into that a bit later in the panel. So thank you so much for the invitation, and I hope that we will have a very productive dialogue here.
Hi everyone, my name is Vlad Adamescu. I'm also sort of in between places, between Brussels and Bucharest, but I've also left and returned a couple of times now to Romania and to the UK, where I also studied. I did my undergrad at King's College London, and then my master's degree at the London School of Economics, and I'm very happy to be here.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. So, Joanna, I think I'm going to start with you. So you studied a master's degree in international social and public policy at LSE, as you mentioned, and then you returned to do a PhD at the University of Bucharest, and then you also mentioned that you're thinking of maybe leaving again. Could you talk a little bit more about the thought process and the key factors that influenced your decisions, like your migratory decisions, to study abroad and then come back?
So I think maybe what's most relevant, I don't quite remember what I thought in high school about leaving. I know I wanted to leave, but it's difficult. A lot of years have passed, and maybe I don't quite remember what I was thinking. But I remember the second moment that I decided to leave for abroad quite clearly. And it was because I went to take an entrance exam for a master's program in Romania. And one of my teachers had invited me to apply, and I was very flattered. And I went to the exam, and we had to prepare to read some books beforehand. And I wasn't feeling very well, and I remember that I made an effort to be as prepared as possible. And then I got there, and I think out of the other people who applied and took part in the exam, it seemed to me like most had at most skimmed the book. They hadn't read the books. And it just felt like this huge disappointment, not necessarily because the people that were taking part in the exam weren't very prepared, but because the teachers seemed so accepting of it. I'm not saying, that they wanted that to happen, but I'm just saying that they were designed somehow, that the people taking part were not going to be very prepared, and I'm sure there was a sort of very practical, pragmatic calculus of, we need a certain number of students to have this master's program function, so we're going to accept a certain number of students even though they're not very prepared. And I think that was the moment when I thought, oh my God, what does this say about me that I'm in this room? Like, am I going to take this program, master's program with these people? And that's when I decided to leave, and I didn't manage to leave that year, but that was one of the reasons that I went to LSE. And I think in a broader sense, that's something that I think about quite a lot. If sometimes you're put in a position where you look around and it seems like other people have given up, and then you sort of think, do I have to say I'm Spartacus? Like, do I have to sacrifice myself for the collective? And if so, what are my chances of success? So to not make the answer longer, I think that was one of the main impetus moments. And when I came back, it was again somewhat the pandemic and also wanting to be home. And one more thing, I was thinking about the President Constantinescu's intervention earlier. And even yesterday I had a training that I had to do online. And similar to now, there were starts and stops and problems. Isn't it better to just be in the room? When you're in the room, things change, there's rapport. I don't know you, but it's better, right? So that's how I feel sometimes about being in Romania. It's just better, the quality is different. Even though, of course, it's really important to be able to be there even from a distance. But there's something extra. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to pass the mic to Anna as well, especially given Ioana's experience with the entrance exams and the academic process. I was curious, so one of the sectors that is most affected by brain drain is the research sector. And given your involvement with academia in Romania, what does your experience look like? What do you feel are the main difficulties, but also opportunities when it comes to studying here or doing research here?
So my thing is research. It has always been research, and my fields of study are cultural studies, particularly genocide studies and modern American literature. And on the other side, since I have two universities, public law. The thing is, academia in Romania is fundamentally different from the West. It looks different, it feels different. You are treated differently if you come from like a Romanian background when it comes to taking your research outside the borders of your country. You are treated differently, and I think my experience in research as a young researcher, because I'm only at the beginning, the very, very beginning of my journey with research, I think one of the challenges is that once you try to go international, you get treated differently. There's a lot of xenophobia. There are a lot of prejudices, and there are a lot of stereotypes against Romanian people, and they appear even when it comes to academia, and it can be disheartening. It can be really heartbreaking to see this. You work so much on for example, a research paper, and you really wish to take it to an international conference, and you try to present it, but nobody's listening to you. You are Romanian. You have a Romanian sounding name. You come from a Romanian university. You get treated differently. And I think this double standard can be really discouraging. But I'm giving my best to not let it stop me from actually doing research, because this is my passion. A good thing about doing research is that there are a lot of niches in Romania. There are a lot of niches to fill. For example, genocide studies is something that isn't really fruitful in Romania, to say so. And there are more opportunities on Romanian soil simply because it is Romanian soil and nobody did this before. Another great thing is that, and this is unexpected for me, young people, especially people involved in research, academia in general, in Romania tend to believe that this place is not ideal. It's not the best, that the West is far superior in all ways, and this is one of the intuitive reasons for brain drain, I think. I feel like I also had this belief to some extent. To some extent, I believed that staying here was sort of a sacrifice, just like Ioana said, that it felt sacrificial, that it felt lustral in a way. And so I was surprised by Romanian academia. The teachers are great, the research is great, there's a lot of innovation that is happening. It's probably not promoted that well. But I've come to notice that people put a lot of soul into what they're doing in Romanian research. And I feel like that is really pushing me forward. That is really what's helped me find my drive when it comes to research.
Thank you. I would like to move the conversation to Tudor and Vlad and Razvan. Just curious, based on what Anna said, what has your experience been abroad with, interactions based on prejudice, based on the fact that you're Romanian?
So I'm quite surprised actually by Anna's experience, but it just shows, I think, that we all, even when studying or working abroad, just really live in different bubbles. because, for example, my experience, and it may just have been a lucky one, has been not really encountering that kind of discrimination or kind of xenophobia. And at least my experience has been one where, for example, in university and then working in London, it's been really, really multicultural. So not even just from the Romanian perspective of how are Romanians treated, but rather you constantly study, work with, interact with people of all nationalities, from European to North American, Asian, South American, African nationalities. So, and everyone is kind of there for the common goal you're there for, studying, working, and there's a lot of synergy between people. So at least my experience hasn't been that, but actually I realized that it's a bubble issue. So there's so many bubbles, as you say, academia maybe has more rigid constraints as regards credentials, the power of reputation, and the power different, or rather the leverage different countries hold relative to each other in kind of publishing power, for example. So that may be entirely different. And I also suspect it's a class thing. I mean, the types of work where people engage in professional services, law, I don't know, or kind of high-level vocational services like medicine, or these areas are slightly less likely to face probably xenophobia versus a lot of not only seasonal workers, but also kind of brain-trained, highly educated workers, maybe in areas where it's a lot more harder to distinguish yourself because of your nationality.
Thank you. I'm curious if either Vlad or Razvan have any comments on that.
I would say, like, I agree with Tudor. My experience has been mostly similar. I never experienced any kind of prejudice or I don't know, discrimination at university. On the contrary, many professors that I had were more excited that I was from Romania, which is a very understaffed when it comes to political science or public policy or stuff like that, like related subjects that I did in university. Many professors were more excited to come discuss their ideas with me to see if they apply even and to Eastern European context, if they apply to Romania, and they were very curious to see a Romanian perspective on many issues because they mostly had the Polish or the Hungarian or the Czech experience, but they didn't have the Romanian angle to most of the things that they were teaching, basically. So it was a very interesting back and forth from, I don't know, looking at the difference between secret police during communism to looking at, I don't know, democratic backsliding in Romania as compared to Poland, judicial activism in Romania versus Hungary or Poland or Bulgaria, stuff like that. So on the contrary, I think that it was, I was lucky, obviously, but I think it was, they were very interested in having that sort of perspective. And I think this is a UK thing because of its multicultural tradition, basically, that Tudor was talking about. Yeah.
I couldn't add much to that. I also agree with Vlad and Tudor. Luckily, my experience has been a very good one in the sense that, yeah, people were excited to hear about what I have to say, my lived experience in Romania, and also some background and history of our country and of the region. But it really depends, I think, on the bubble you're in, because I've also had friends or people that I've met and didn't really work in academia or weren't studying at the time or were working, and in their environment they were more likely to encounter some discriminatory behaviors. So it's not unheard of, and of course I've heard about that, but luckily I haven't been the target of such behavior, and it's been a really fruitful experience for me and also for Vlad, and hopefully for Tudor as well. I'm studying there because I've managed to understand more about the tradition of a country that is very welcoming towards, at least on that level of immigrants, or at least people who come there to study and to give back to the British society. So I would say it's been a good experience, and if everybody's thinking of studying abroad, I would say don't be afraid, because from what I know, from what I've talked to, from my lived experience, you wouldn't have any major disadvantages coming from Romania and studying in the UK, or at least in Western Europe.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move the discussion back to you, Tudor. So you pursued law at Cambridge, and given this choice, you would have had to make a decision to stay more permanently abroad in the future. And I'm just curious, when did you make that decision, and what factors kind of influenced that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think so. The general factors were the classic value of UK academia, kind of the significant amount of resources that UK academia puts towards its students, both in teaching, kind of supervisions, tutorials, but also in the just money that it can throw at them for research purposes, for traveling abroad. For example, I did a lot of debating during university, and we would get flown out to all kinds of places around the world to debating competitions, which were paid for by the university, and that's an incredible privilege to that these universities can afford to throw at their students. But I also know it's not even just a debating thing. For example, I know people who from my cohort who did, for example, geography, and were flown out to the Tenerifes to do a 6-month project on volcano research while kind of on a Tenerife beach every day, right? Whether they were studying or kind of sunbathing, it's a separate question. But so there's a lot of kind of resources. There's a lot of ability that they have to teach very well. But the one thing I would really stress actually is, beyond that, those were the general factors, but beyond that I would really stress the importance of community, and even more so peer pressure. Because in high school, I started off saying, I'm going to do law in Bucharest, in Romania. And I really was happy with that. I thought, yeah, sure, maybe there's some opportunities outside that I could go to them after doing undergrad, doing a master's or whatever. But what really swung it for me was that an increasing number of my high school classmates were applying for university in the UK, and it ended up being 3/4 of my high school class who ended up going to study abroad. And then when I saw them, all of them applying, I was like, well, I probably should do as well. Like, boy, oh boy, did I go in there and apply immediately as well, because I just felt I was losing out if I wasn't at least trying and having that option to study abroad. And then happily, I got a spot, and then obviously it had great consequences later on, but I really couldn't have known that. But what I would kind of stress about this point is, I think once a critical mass of a cohort or generation is met, then you'll see a lot more people leaving even than intended initially, because they're just following the rest of their community for the links that they'll continue to build with their community, or just wanting to feel that they belong even in the new place they go to. So I think the last thing I'd say on this is, I really fear that the threshold, the kind of step, the threshold of people leaving, which triggers mass migration, may be a lot lower. So the threshold of kind of how many people have to leave in order for a really large amount of people to leave may be a lot lower than we expect. It may just be, I don't know, a quarter, half a classroom, and then all of the classroom will follow because they're following their community.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Anna, since she also studied law, and in a similar way would mean that she's a little bit more tied to the country. I wanted to ask if that was a consideration about the fact that it would be maybe more difficult to leave Romania if you would ever want to.
The answer is 50% yes, 50% no. The thing is as follows. Did I do that? Was it my fault?
I think he's just not much. It's fine.
Right. Whatever. So it's 50% yes, 50% no. The part of it that is yes is as follows. Studying law ties you to a place. Studying Romanian law makes me, maybe not an expert, makes me kind of savant in Romanian law. Being a savant in Romanian law doesn't make you a savant in French law or Czech law or Bulgarian law. And it goes like that for all countries, even within the EU. So studying law, choosing to study law in Romania was completely intentional. I don't plan on leaving, and I like it here. I feel like there's a lot to be done here, a lot to be improved, and the decision felt natural to me. However, the other half of my answer, which was no, is the fact that I never intend to practice law. I intend to do research. That is my thing. I like doing research, especially reconciling domains, and I feel like having a law degree will help me in my research. And research can go international without any issues. So it ties me to my country, but it also doesn't, because the nature of my activity is a lot more open, a lot more flexible, a lot less bound by borders.
The next question I would like to open up to the entire panel, so whoever would want to answer, just let me know. But during your studies, have any of you ever come across an opportunity in Romania for those who went abroad, or abroad for those who stayed in Romania, that made you reconsider your decision to either leave or stay?
I think we can answer that. Yes, the fact that we managed to start a project that got some attention and managed to, I believe, help quite a lot of young people get more informed and interested in politics. That gave us a strong reason to come back and want to build something here in Romania, and also made me believe that there's indeed a lot of place for entrepreneurship, not really economic but social and political, and so a lot of place for initiative. And there's also a lot of a lot of space that you can use up and do a lot of good stuff with young people and for young people. And maybe it's quite idealistic, and I often think that maybe it's a very idealistic vision, because, as Tor said, we've been privileged to study in universities and we have a good education, and so we are privileged among our peers. But at the same time, I think that anybody could do something, and there's a lot of space for anybody, not only those who have studied abroad and have come back. So that's a reason for everybody to try to build something here and build bridges to their peers abroad, and convince them to come back and do something around here.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit more about your project. So why was it important to you to start Politica la Minut? And also, given the success of it, what are your plans for the future? How do you see it developing? And are there any other projects that you would want to pursue in the future?
So I think I can jump in on that. We started it because we got lots of questions while we were in our first year that we were doing the site in London, and we had a lot of friends. I'm from Bucharest, the ones from Cluj, and we had a lot of friends who were asking us, like on completely different friend groups, what is going on in the local elections, what does the county president do, what is the local council, why do I have to vote in these elections, what happens if I don't vote, or if I vote, or if I cancel my vote, or what is going on, basically, with politics. And we thought, if both our friend group are asking this, then there is a real interest and there is a real gap that we can fill to bring to bring understanding about politics to young people in Romania, because there is no civic education being done, there's no, I don't know, democratic education being done in high schools in Romania, unfortunately, not even today. So we thought we could have an impact and help people navigate politics basically and become better citizens. And that was quite, I don't know, it was successful, and we also stepped up and started to explain EU politics, and we both ended up working for an EU institution, so that helped us have a deeper understanding of what's going on in the EU and why Brussels and why the laws that are being done here in Brussels and Strasbourg are so important also for Romanian citizens. And to also understand the fact that Romania is always involved in the decision-making process, and Romanian MPs and Romanian members of the council are always involved in the decisions that are being done in Brussels, and it's not a foreign thing, basically, that we always wanted to get that point across, basically. And when it comes to future plans, I think I'll let Răzvan elaborate maybe.
So very short, because I don't want to take too much time with this, but our goal is to expand and maybe open up something in the Republic of Moldova, because we think that there's a lot of space there to build. In the sense that we have the same language, they also have a lot of misinformation, disinformation in their public arena, so there's some need for accurate and objective, also news sources, but information regarding politics, and at the same time build a sort of hub that young academics and policymakers and also people interested in studying more in Romania can join, and then build some local knowledge regarding policy, regarding a lot of aspects that we think are understudied in Romania. So basically build a place where people want to come back and study here and write about Romania and about other countries in the region, so that they can have a place that they can feel welcome, and also feel that they can make a difference at home if they want to come back.
Thank you so much. And just one more follow-up question. I'm also going to open it up to the panel if anybody has anything to add. What advice would you give to someone who's potentially abroad but wants to contribute in some way to Romania, but has no idea where to start?
I'd say start with what you like to do, because what we found out is every time we try to take another way, follow, for example, the money trail, or doing something that sounds like important, or that would bring you, I don't know, a lot of validation, it didn't work. So start with what you'd like to do, and start with your passion, and try to transform that passion into maybe more than just a hobby or something during your free time. Try making it your career, and that may be vague, but I think that each and every one of us we studied law or politics or whatever because we have some sort of passion or interest in that, and trying following your passion rather than your economic interests or something like that, because it doesn't work and you get tired very soon.
I would just add, find a niche that, I don't know, maybe find a subject that is understudied, or find some gap in the market, so to say, the market for ideas, and try to go from there and maybe see if that niche could also suit your interest and what you want to, basically, what the Răzvan is going to also, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna. Sorry. Go.
So my advice would be to think about why you left, because there must be a reason why you left. There must have been something that pushed you over the edge and you decided to leave your home country. It's a difficult decision to take, and there's usually something that is missing that is making you want to leave. Ask yourself, why did I want to leave? see what's missing and put in the work to bring it into your country if you want to truly help.
I was just going to add a quick thing to that, and my advice would be connect, because if you reach out to people either you know from Romania, or people you admire from Romania, or people your age who are doing cool things in Romania, that will put you into a network of people which, from where you get inspired to also do things which make your passion, or you may discover your passion. So for example, every time I come back to Bucharest, come back home for holidays, for like Christmas, Easter, but even other occasions as well, I try to make a point out of setting up meetings with as many of my both friends, but also maybe people I don't know that well, but I knew a bit better when I was here in high school, and try to reconnect with them and kind of chat, and maybe make new friends as well, or reconnect with old friends. But often you also discover what very interesting people are doing in Romania, and how it's really a space for innovation and opportunity. And the last important thing I think I'll say on that is I really feel that Romania is a place where the networks of people you can connect with are still very open, because they're very new. They're not established, for example, in the UK, I felt at times that the networks of opportunity, the networks of power, the networks of ability to change things are somewhat closed, because they've been there for centuries, right? And they've closed up around people who maybe kind of have connected to each other a while back. But in Romania, it's also open because it's also new, and people are really keen to expand those networks as soon as possible. So then they're very open to you reaching out. I know people who've just reached out via Instagram, via Facebook, via LinkedIn, to politicians, to kind of politicians from the European Parliament, representing Romania in the European Parliament, and who've got a response. And they've been like, oh yeah, I'd love to have a coffee. That's so great that you want to get involved and you're generally interested in this area. Here's my general thoughts. I hope that helps. So people are really open to do that, so it's worth reaching out.
Yeah, well, I think that has been our experience with this conference as well. We've been very positively received by many different institutions, and we're very thankful for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that to say that if your sort of baseline is passivity, then anyone who says, I want to do something, I want to give a bit of my time, is going to stand out, and I think people will react very positively. And that's been my experience as well. I think as president of Artor, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of teachers, especially educators in the country. And if you go to them with a project, there are a lot of people who are very enthusiastic. Like I've had calls, and at the end of them, we had like teams of people ready to take on a new challenge. So that's been really great. And I just wanted to add one thing. So it seems like for Tudor, the reason he left was sort of the positive case for abroad, whereas for me, it was sort of the negative case for Romania, right? I think what you can sort of take from that is, I think with the positive case, that is where you can talk about a threshold of people, when a lot of people start leaving. I think with the negative case, it's more about just a general impression that you can have, not necessarily depending on the number of people, but rather the quality of the process. So I think maybe what you could do from abroad, I think that would be very helpful if you could contribute a bit to the quality. I'm not saying, I don't want to say, there are a lot of great things that are happening in academia right now in Romania as well, and I'm doing a PhD in Romania, so obviously I have some interest in it, and but what I would say is, I think sometimes know-how helps a lot. Like my experience, for example, so I did public policy in London, and when I came back to Romania, I felt like there were some issues in academia with some research methods and some of the things like, RCTs, knowing how to do different. So that was something that I felt like I could contribute, and I have been doing for my PhD a bit. So maybe that's something like identifying something that would make the negative case be less convincing, and saying sort of like, hey, this is happening. But yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Since we're close to running out of time, I'm going to move to the last few questions. The first is, and this is to the entire panel, how important would you say that family and cultural ties are when you made your decision to either stay or leave?
super important for me. I think being abroad was very difficult, and yeah, family and friends did matter a lot. So maybe that's also something that, you know, the more that institutions in Romania encourage these sort of informal networks of friends, of families being together, I think that's, again, something that might make people come back. Whereas, I think you were saying very well at the beginning, if you're young, you have fewer dependencies, you go abroad, you build a family, and then you're probably gonna stay there. But if you keep reminding people, again, when they're in this stage, this initial stage where they're not yet settled abroad, I think if you remind them of all the things that they can come back to in terms of social things, that can be very important. At least for me, it mattered. I mean, I was in a very international environment, and there were a lot of very interesting people, but I felt that fundamentally there were some inexplicable, implicit things that I couldn't quite communicate about being Romanian in my experience. And I would find myself gravitating towards other people in Eastern Europe, just because it felt like we had more of a general profile. So when I came back, there was this feeling of comfort, even though it didn't make sense, it was during the pandemic, nothing was comfortable. But it still felt much more natural for me and organic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it mattered. I think for me it mattered slightly less because at least my family and friends were very supportive of going to study for university there. And as I said, many of my friends were going themselves. So actually, we were all going in a big cohort together.
That was not my case. So, yeah.
And then, but I think it's an interesting point about families and kind of building these relationships. And what I would maybe focus on as well is how and why family matters later on in life and whether you decide to return. Because I think what we're seeing is that we speak a lot about freedom of movement, right? But I think an important counterpoint is freedom to stay, because later on in life, when you want to settle somewhere with a family, you want to set up a family, or you want to just, decide what your community is and want to contribute to it, there's practical considerations to take into account, which I've seen a lot of people kind of use to determine that Romania is the place they want to settle back into. So for example, just to pick one big example, house prices and housing costs, right? A lot of people from Romania who I speak to in the UK just know that they don't want to set up a family or kind of have kids, for example, in the UK, because they can never afford to buy a house. Or if they would afford to buy a house, it would be a tiny kind of one bedroom, two bedroom, whatever, matchbox, right? And they say, but comparatively, coming back to Romania is incredibly helpful in that respect, because you can build a house, you can buy a house with the same, buy a big house with the same amount of money you would buy a kind of tiny flat in London, right? So I think it also matters on the return journey as well.
Thank you. The final question I would ask is, what advice would you give to young Romanians who are currently considering whether to leave or to stay?
You're not going to know. There's no way of knowing. There are no guarantees. But what you can do is you can make a decision and then not be afraid to assess it and figure out if it's something that maybe you want to stop, you want to come back immediately. That's fine. I think that's something that I felt in my life sometimes, that I've made a decision and then felt beholden to it. Like I had to go on with it, and that was like my path in life. And that's not the case. You're very young. You are more than able and allowed to, and even encouraged to change your mind as much as possible.
I was just going to double down on what you said. I think that's really important, kind of not being chronocentric, of thinking right now is the only moment that matters, and what I decide now will influence 20 years of my life. It never does. I mean, as you say, you can always come back, but also there'll be so many opportunities which appear in your life to go in different directions. And we travel so easily now, kind of wherever in Europe and Romania, but also beyond Europe, that it's just jump and take take whatever call you want, and you'll be able to reverse it at any point. I mean, you know, that old kind of proverb about if it won't matter in 5 years, then don't worry about it, really holds, I think, and it won't matter what you decide today. So don't.
Another thing, and this is my perspective, a person who has never left the country for their studies. I might leave, but that's totally a different question. I think my advice would be to stop thinking in black and white. It's the same thing, just reformulated maybe. It's adjacent to what both my colleagues, let's say my fellow panel members have said. It goes as such. There is nothing, quite nothing, as harmful as black and white thinking. Stop thinking in black and white. Should I stay or should I go? Should I stay here and do something for my own country, or should I leave and develop myself? Things are never just black and white. It's never this or that. You can have it all. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can take care of both your heart and your mind. Things aren't as rigid as they seem.
Thank you very much. Does any of the boys online want to say anything before we close?
Maybe just, yeah, I would add that, like, I would leave and then come back. So at least do, I don't know, go on an Erasmus, do a master's degree if you can, if you have the means. I realize we're coming from a place of privilege because we were able to study in the UK when the fees were low, and the UK is no longer an option for many people in Romania. But there are still, you can go to France, you can go to Netherlands. Like, I would go see what these places have to offer in terms of like what the university system is like and what you can study and learn there, and see how that compares to the Romanian system, and see how can it be improved. Like, go and see some best practices, I would say, so that you can have the tools necessary to improve Romania, basically. Yeah.
And I just want to say I agree with Vlad. I would just add that there's no recipe, there's no guarantee of success. Whether you first study abroad and then come back, or study here and then study abroad, there's no one way of doing things. And you shouldn't, listen to people who say, there is a certain recipe. Of course, studies show that, pursuing higher education and so on brings you a lot of benefits afterwards in life. But there's no one way of approaching these issues. And I would just agree with Vlad. I encourage you to try something abroad because it opens up your perspective. You meet more people. You encounter more opportunities. But don't stick to just one plan. Try to be open-minded when things change, and try to pursue what you think is best at the time.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, all of you. We're out of time for any further questions, so I'm going to close the panel. But thank you very much for coming and for your valuable opinions.
Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you, Razvan. Thank you, Duda. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. Both Annas. Thank you all very much. This was a very insightful panel. And now we're going to take a break for 10 minutes. I know there's been some intense sessions. We'll come back at 30 past. But in the meantime, in the hallway, there's some refreshments and snacks, and just have a little coffee break, and then meet you back here in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.